Okay, round of applause. Gihan from Converse AI.
So I'm Gihan and I'm from Converse AI. So what Converse AI does is pretty much a chatbot building platform where people doesn't need to actually use code and sit down and write rigorous amount of NLP code and process linkages and all these things. Where what we have is we have this concept of chat flow where you, rather than program your chatbot or communication, you actually model your conversation where your user and your bot needs to have, and between that you can integrate your services like if you want to send some data to Salesforce or something like that, so you can link up modules throughout the conversation same way as a human being who's gathering the data would type on the Salesforce account, so the bot would do that for you. So we are playing around with the concept called chat flow, where bots are just not for chat purposes, but they actually can run day-to-day businesses and actually use them as employees to help your current employees or to have a more stand. So to start off with, so this idea of chatbots is not a new idea, to be honest. It has been there from IRC days, if people have been using them. So, and also automated answer based on text is not a new idea. So, but why there's this huge chatbot explosion? So I think one of the main points is that more and more people are to use messaging as their main communication method. So people like texting rather than picking up the phone and talking to somebody or emailing or anything like that. Just purely text-based communication has gone up with the new millennium. And another thing is, so more and more businesses which are out there are moving to social media. So like these days you can't find a single company which doesn't have a Facebook page or have a Twitter account which actually communicate to their users. So which brings a total new paradigm of how are we going to keep track of amount of information that people are trying to talk to us or have a conversation with us. Because if you have a Facebook page, somebody would need to chat to you on the Facebook. So you're not going to you can't sustain by putting huge amount of human power onto that, because any given day, maximum a human would be able to talk would be 2 or 3 simultaneous conversations, and threading is something that computers have solved about 20 odd years ago. So you can simply run multiple conversations over and over again. And so other aspect is these days you can actually have anything as a service. I mean, when was the last time somebody hosted their own email server or even wrote their own CRM rather than using Salesforce? So if there's so much of open APIs that people can integrate. So, and that has given this idea of, okay, so we can actually automate things. So where chatbots came was, okay, so the automation part came up and there were APIs, but now people wanted the more natural way of communication with these APIs rather than just trying to adapt them as separate programs. And other thing which I always like to talk about is, so if you pick your smartphone now, how many mobile applications that you currently have? Like, so with the concept like IOT, where you can manage your fridge, manage your house, and manage your heating system, you are not going to have an app for each specific component of your household. So most probably you would want to, I don't know, text to the house and say, please put the heating on, and it will sort the rest of the things out, rather than click on the house app and then go and select the heating app, whatever, based on the heating provider, and then say, well, okay, let's put the heating up again. And most importantly, the NLP and AI technologies have moved a lot ahead, rather than days of regular expressions and matching strings together to map NLP. So that has had a huge effect on this explosion of chatbots. So where does the role of NLP actually comes into play? So obviously NLP is the core of chatbots, because what you want people to interact is with natural language. So that's the whole reason of people are moving to text. There are so much is is on using emojis, so like abbreviations and everything, rather than just going and clicking on buttons. So NLP plays a huge role. I'm not going to dive into what is the best technology of NLP out there, because there's a half a dozen APIs that you can just take out, and there's so much of research papers has been done if you want to implement your own NLP thing. But exactly when it comes to chatbots, there's few things that we need to consider when either using or adopting an NLP technology. So the main thing is emphasis on sentiment. So the current, I wouldn't say current NLP is not 100% there. Well, not even, I don't think even 50% there. So one of the, I think you can beep this if you want to, but one of the explicit examples that we got from our customers was, so somebody was typing, "This is the shit." So, and also there's a huge difference, somebody typing "this is shit" and "this is the shit" when it comes to actual sentiment. A normal human being would be able to pick that up, but majority of the NLP code out there would always flag that as a bad impression. On when somebody says "this is the shit," it'll say this is a bad impression of your product. And currently, I can tell you any NLP system currently would flag that out as a bad usage of your user experience. So there's a lot of work that needs to be there, but I'm sure the technologies would come there at some point. And the other thing is ongoing training. So when you're building a chatbot, so one of the main components of NLP is actually you need to train it, and people need to understand what is the intent, what is the context that is being linked up with. So you need to make sure that you have an NLP system where when you're, and the worst case of this matter is that you would actually get to know what people are asking when the bot is actually live running in your system. So you need to catch the failures and train your NLP system without actually putting the bot down. So you don't want to give a bad experience to users that say, so, okay, bot is down for training. That's a bad adaptation of bots. And again, most of the current NLP systems are missing this as well, the actual chat abbreviation. So when was the last time somebody said yes rather than giving a thumbs up for a yes no question? So most of the NLP system, if you send a thumbs up as an emoji, it'll break that says I can't pass this. So those kind of consideration needs to be taken off, because you are actually trying to link up a bot to an existing messaging platform rather than asking users to change their behavior to use the bot. I think me and Tim had a very good discussion one day about this idea, because people are already used to using SMS, they're already used to using Facebook, Messenger, or Layer, or whatever, 100 different messaging platforms. So people need to be able to link, NLP system should be able to understand this is what people are talking about when they're using actual abbreviations of the language. And one of the most important things, again, context-aware NLP. So for example, if somebody says orange in your chat, so orange can be a fruit if your chatbot is handling a fruit market, and orange can be a color if it's a textile retail shop, and again, orange can be a drink if it's a, I don't know, something like Fanta or something like that. So based on the context, the word orange would have different meanings. So a human being can understand based on the context what they're talking about. So the same idea needs to be adapted to any NLP technology that you are using if you want to give a proper experience for the user base. And most importantly, just because you have the perfect NLP system, it would not produce a useful bot, because NLP is just, like I said, as the heart. It will understand what you're talking about, but most important thing is what you're going to do with the data that you actually understood and how you're going to use them. So what are the things that, there are a few things that we need to consider beyond NLP if you're doing chatbots. So the first thing is user experience and users' perception on using chatbots. The same way Simon said. So would people need to know, your user base need to know whether this is handled by a bot or whether this is handled by a human? Does it actually matter? So when we had our first customer, so we did all this system with bells and whistles very fast, and answers get bot answers in split milliseconds and things like that. So the first requirement from our customer was, could you please put some delay onto the answers? So, so regardless how many, so their first requirement was, I want a delay when the bot answers to match actual human answers. So that actually shows, okay, the technology is good, but that is totally to do with the user's perception of how they are using the service. And again, going back to the point of people are so used to using their different chat messages and chat systems. So whatever the bots that you develop need to incorporate with your, incorporate whatever the messaging platforms your customer base is already using. So that's a good thing of using bots and automated systems, because you can just link up with, I don't know, Messenger API, Slack API, Twilio APIs for SMS and all those purposes. You can link them up nicely and it'll work. And if you want to make your life easy, you need to find a way that you can actually train a single bot to talk to different channels. It's almost like putting model view controller approach onto bot communication. So if somebody comes with Facebook, so they can just use the Facebook approach, but your training data and your NLP model and everything is a single bot. So, but based on where they're coming from, the perception would differ. And use of rich media. So again, this comes back to, again, for the user's experience. So people like to send text, but they rarely like to read huge amount of information which is being sent to them. So they would like to see pictures. If you're sending a bunch of on a retail shop, if you're somebody shopping and asks for, can I get some T-shirts? So rather than sending them, okay, go to this link, go to this link, go to this link, you can actually, so I don't know if anybody has used Facebook Messenger API, so you can actually send through Facebook, you can actually give them proper carousels that they can actually browse on the chat rather than sending them explicit link where they can click on. So again, goes back to, yeah, so the NLP, so chatbots are based on text, but again, you need to, when you're considering about the user experience, if your incoming messages or incoming data stream allows rich media approaches, where if somebody wants to say, well, yes or no, so rather than asking them to type yes or no, you can actually give 2 buttons, please click yes or no. It's on the same chat box, which has more user adaptation than just asking them to type all the time. And I guess the other thing is linking up with your existing services. So there's no point of having a chatbot just to have communication and gather the data, and you want somebody else to browse through the data which was gathered and actually put them onto a different system to process. So if you want to employ or use a chatbot as part of your core platform or part of your core communication, you need to exactly do what you would want a staff member to do when you are gathering that information. So if you are adding a sales lead onto Salesforce, and if you are putting a chatbot in front to replicate whatever your first line support or second line support or sales guys were doing, that chatbot needs to interact exactly the same way that the human was interacting with your core system, so that you don't have huge differentiation of the data, and the adaptation within the company would be much easier. And human and bots working on the same conversation. So this is something that many of our current customers use. So people who use intercom, I don't know whether you guys know about intercom. So they put intercom in front of their website to gather basic information and chats and things, so chat to customers. And majority of them, the current usages that you have seen, is they actually put a bot to handle majority of the questions, while the same communication can be seen by every single staff member who's on the same team. So they're actually using the bot as a staff member, and if a bot fails to answer, then somebody jumps in and answer. As far as the user is concerned, they are actually getting a direct flow of information without having a different change between, oh, this is a bot and bot failed, and this is a human, and what's the difference? So which comes to the most important point. You need to handle when the bot failing. So end of the day, they are computers, and rather than saying computer says no, there should be a different mechanism that you have put when your bot actually fails and to run with the current communication of the user. So it could be as simple as it can be a failure of the system, it can be a failure of NLP parsing, or it can be failure of given bad data. It can be so many things, because end of the day we are talking about language processing, which is from different user to user, how they use semantics, how they use grammars, how they use actual speaking or spellings, and everything is totally different. So rather than bot says no, there should be a way that gradually either you put it to a human or put it to a nice way of handling those errors. So which brings to this diagram, which actually think how a bot should be adapted when they're using. So things that need to be. So the first thing, so you need to think about how your current employees going to behave with the bot. End of the day, somebody needs to train the bot to do some sort of a work. So it could be expert knowledge that the current one of the staff members have. It could be somebody. And if you're using, I mean, these days most of the companies use, anybody use Slack as internal communication? So everybody uses Slack as internal communication. So you can't actually put a bot platform or a bot into a system and say, now please go to a different system to figure out where the bot has gone wrong. So if people are using chat for internal communication, the bot should be using chat for actually pushing messages out that says, okay, I can't sort out this, somebody can look it out as well, which ironically most of the few of our customers currently do as well. And again, talking about the automations and user experience, which is exactly the same thing. So you need to make sure that your different users or based on your user base, based on how they come from, you actually give a proper user experience for them. So if somebody is coming from Facebook and chatting to you, asking about some details, given, again, going back to the rich media angle, given that you can actually do rich media, there's no point of actually asking him to either type 1 to 10, a number between 1 to 10, a number between 1 to 2. But again, if somebody is coming from SMS, you can't do that angle. So you need to actually ask them for an actual textual input. So based on how they are interacting with your bot, you need to be flexible enough so that you can actually push the correct experience onto the user. And the main thing, it's almost like, so how much do you trust your bot to run your business, which is the most important and most painful thing for pretty much every guy who's adopting a bot. So to what certain extent that you would trust your bot. So would you trust your bot to do, I don't know, multi-million sale, or would you trust your bot to handle requests from your biggest customer? Would you? So those kind of things. Again, end of the day, this is where the automation things would come into play. So if you actually consider a bot as a, I don't know, intern or a based employee. So if you don't trust your intern to handle your biggest customer as soon as they start, then most probably giving the bot to handle your biggest customer might not be the best solution there as well. So it's all to try to link up your current way of doing businesses with this whole idea of, okay, there's this other guy who sits in some channel and just answer questions randomly. So this is sort of a example use case. One of our customers came to us. So it's like, so the customer calls customer support and says, oh, my X service is not working. And the support guy checks the thing and say, oh, you haven't paid your bill. So it gets transferred onto accounts or billing department. And accounts stuff gets sorted and then comes back. Customer says, I'm paying way too much, so I need to change my plan. So then obviously customer support guy is not going to handle that. He's going to just push it to one of the salesperson or account managers or whatever. So this is kind of like, I don't know if you're buying internet service or anything like that, would be a base sort of a customer experience example. So how would you adopt such a use case? Because that is an actual tangible use case where where customers would see there's actual business benefit to automating these kind of procedures. So there's two schools of thinking on this one. So one, you build this big bot who knows everything and link up to every single service which is out there, training and everything. And then you actually build multiple bots, small, just are specifically required to do specific tasks. So they are actually trained on X amount of the business, and they'll understand the NLP and the language behind that part. Goes on like so. Both have their benefits and drawbacks. So like if you put single-purpose bots, again, like I said, so if you say, well, there's Steve bot, then everybody knows what Steve bot do. So it says, okay, it asks for customer details, puts them up, checks everything up, and try to answer as much as FAQs it can. If it can't, then it will offload to whatever the department it needs to handle. And again, easy to train. So most probably, Steve can train Steve bot because he knows what customers actually asking most of the time, what answers he give. So the training would be straightforward. And again, you can you would in your head you can actually model it nicely because you would see, well, this is what normal use case of Steve. So let's try to model what Steve does in a more conversational manner. And again, smoother bot human hybrid model again goes back to the part that says what happens when bot can't answer. So there should be, rather than telling, okay, there'll be human escalation if the bot fails, what you actually need is expert escalation when the bot fails. Because if your bot has already failed to answer a customer, you don't want to just pass it to somebody else, which says, oh, I don't know, I need to pass it to somebody else. And this guy says, I don't know, I need to pass to somebody else. So in a normal customer support scenario, you wouldn't do that in the first place. So why would you do that if you are adapting a bot to handle the base customer interaction? And again, if you just start with one, if the bot doesn't work, you can just say, throw off bot, we'll just go back to the same way that we were doing things, which doesn't actually affect anything, because what you have done is you have just put another member of a staff to handle the same process that you guys were handling, and define clear boundaries. And again, if you have multiple bots, just one big thing to manage, and one place of interaction, user experience won't vary from each bot to bot, because normally what we have seen is bots, even though this is not intentional, bots tend to adapt like the language, communication, even though this is all computational, nothing is majorly running with neural networks or anything like that. When different people training the bot, it almost becomes like it takes part of the same way that people interact, like the language that the bot uses and everything will become a bit different. So if Steve trains Steve bot and Brenda trains the sales bot, the language and the way that they would communicate and the questions being asked would be totally different, because it's two different people who are actually putting in the training data and says this is way how it should behave. And if you use one big bot, so it's just pretty much one single place of doing the languages. So again, so this is all good. So regardless which approach that you take, end of the day, these are computers running computational code on top of that. So the first thing is NLP has come a huge way from, I think for the last decade, it has actually done a lot of work, but it is nowhere 100% perfect. It is nowhere, the current NLP, obviously this is going to change, another amount of research going on, is nowhere near have capabilities where the human would understand the natural language and how the NLP algorithms would understand the natural language. So that needs to be considered. So there's no, most of the time, the same way with humans, it's good to say, I don't know, and back off rather than giving a wrong answer. So most of the bots fails when it comes to NLP things, because they try to answer and not give a valid answer rather than say, I don't know, I'll just ask somebody else to sort out this. And again, so when people build bots, so they have this perception that says telling to their customers or telling to anybody that this is actually backed by some of humans. If it breaks, is a bad idea. But in my head, it is a good idea, because at the end of the day, you know that if the bot fails, your user is guaranteed to have the same experience that he would have been having, rather than waiting for another or bot to pick up or somebody to restart the conversation. So the other thing is, you need to model how the conversation would flow in your head. Like so this is what user is going to input, and these are my trigger words. This is how the user would going to link up, and these are the actual data that we want. So one of the mistakes that people would do is, if you want the input, says color, there's no problem of asking, could you please enter a color, and ask for the color, because that gives easier on the user that says, okay, I need to input a color. And it is much easier on the NLP system as well. You can just say to the NLP, just could you please check for a color or some other parameters that will go near with the color, rather than this total random thing that says you input anything and we'll try to figure it out. So it's again going back to the user experience. And also this also goes back to the NLP system as well. So if you have a flow of conversation, so go into a flight search thing. So if somebody says, I want a flight, that's fine. So your current intent triggering and whatever the algorithms that you can hook up can say, okay, so this guy needs a flight. So obviously, since it's typing, people would just keep on typing, so most probably your next question from the bot would be, where do you want to type? But by the time that bot is trying to send where do you want to type, user could have actually typed from London to Paris, something like that. So if you actually ask the question again from the user, that is a very bad user experience, because that shows that either nobody was looking at what user was typing. So when considering linking up your conversational flow, you should be able to grab as much as information from the user's current interaction or past interaction, rather than asking questions over and over again for the same set of data. There's a lot of systems these days, you can actually link up user preferences. If you already know the user, if you know his preferences, why ask the question from the bot? Because you wouldn't be asking the question from a human. You would ask, do you want me to book the same thing that you have booked 3 or 4 times? So same sort of ideas, regardless if they use NLP or not, needs to be linked up with how the conversation would flow. And handling small talk, so things like, hello, how are you? So there should be some sort of way need to be thought of, even though that is not your bot's behavior. There should be a way of handling people saying, oh, how are you? Thank you. You're welcome. Those kind of small talk behavior, because that's, again, a more natural experience of users using NLP technologies. And this is my most important thing. So end of the day, bot is a training or a knowledge base or a brain. So if you put garbage, what you get is garbage. So your output would be clear as your input can be. So if you train bot with amount of garbage information of Wikipedia to sell, I don't know, to sell shoes, if you train your bot to think about cars, then obviously you can't sell shoes, because the only training that you have given was cars. So just throwing huge amount of text at an NLP system or your bot would not make it be any smarter or be any useful. So how do you start? So I would say, again, with programming, do your hello world. Just write a simple pick a bot platform, or if you want to code your own thing, find a bot library which can link up with things, and then write a simple hello world. Then actually choose a problem that you know that you can model, and then that you want to solve, and that in your head you know this is how the conversation goes through, this is how it has been happening, and you have previous experience of how it's going through. And then again, find a good NLP base. If you want to write your own, you can knock yourself out as well. It's and again, so like we did with the web technologies these days, where you actually see when you come to a site, there's so much of analytics on your websites these days. You exactly know where this user gets stuck, what part user actually don't go to, what other things. So it needs to be, when you're modeling the conversation, it needs to be, you need to use the same approach as well. So you need to find out, so at which state that on this conversation this actually fails every time. So why do we need this? Why at which part of the conversation this is get passed to, escalated to humans over and over again? So find them, and again, it could be, there are simple things that you can do, like, I don't know, add those data onto your training model so that it picks up next time, or change the questions or the behavior, how it's going to interact. And again, if you want this to be adapted by internal as well as external, it needs to hook into your current system. Just by telling, oh, we have a bot, it's out there and there's this huge amount of data which is coming, but your current staff still needs to browse through all this communication now, which is much harder now because it is actually going through text and then copy and paste to other systems. Nobody would be wanting to adopt that sort of a technology out there. So I think that's it for me.
So, okay, round of applause, Gihan from Converse AI.